Laughing at Midnight follows a struggling group of comedians fighting to save their beloved but dying comedy club, The Punchline, in gritty New York City. Max, a guarded leader hiding behind sarcasm, battles self-doubt while trying to hold the troupe together. Jenna, vibrant and hopeful despite heartbreak, clashes with Elliot, a once great comic turned cynical loner. Maya keeps the club alive behind the scenes, while Tony masks insecurity with slapstick charm. As eviction looms and rivalries explode, their dreams teeter on collapse. Yet through failure, conflict, and vulnerability, they rediscover the power of laughter and the family they never meant to build. The Punchline's neon sign buzzed and flickered against the overcast New York sky, its red and blue glow stuttering like a heartbeat on the edge of collapse. Rain slicked the cracked pavement below, reflecting the unstable light and shimmering puddles. A few souls, braving the chill, approached the narrow entrance, drawn by the promise of laughter in a city that seemed to forget its punchlines more often than not. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of stale beer and worn upholstery. The low murmur of conversation mingled with the clatter of glasses and the occasional burst of nervous laughter. Behind the bar, Tony Rousseau, a stocky man with a perpetual baseball cap turned backwards, juggled empty bottles with exaggerated flair, eliciting groans and chuckles from the small crowd. His slapstick antics were a staple, a physical punctuation to the verbal jabs flying on stage. Backstage, Max Harper hunched over a battered notebook, his pen scratching furiously as he chased elusive punchlines. His dark hair was tousled, as if perpetually tousled by city winds, and the worn leather jacket he wore seemed less a fashion choice and more a security blanket. Max was the de facto leader of this ragtag troupe, his wit sharp but his heart guarded. He paused, reading a joke aloud in a low voice, then crossed it out with a frustrated sigh. The pressure to keep the punchline afloat weighed heavily on him, a constant hum beneath every quip. Jenna Lee burst through the backstage door in a whirlwind of color scarves, mismatched socks, and a smile wide enough to light up the darkest room. Her short curly hair bounced with every step, and her laughter was infectious, slicing through the tension like a sudden summer breeze. Jenna was the rising star, the peacemaker, the spark that kept the group's fragile hope from burning out. She flung an arm around Max's shoulder, pulling him from his scribbles. "Come on, Max. Tonight's the night. We remind them why the punchline still matters," she said, her voice bright but tinged with the fatigue of overcommitment. Max gave a sardonic laugh, the sound rough but genuine. "If by remind you mean bomb spectacularly, then yeah, we're on track." Elliot Brooks leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching the exchange with a dry smile. Tall and lean, he dressed down in simple tees and jeans, his demeanor guarded and sarcastic. Once a rising star in the comedy circuit, Elliot now carried the weight of past flops and heartbreaks like a second skin. He lit a cigarette, the smoke curling lazily toward the ceiling. "You're too hard on yourself, Max," Elliot said, voice low and deadpan. "Besides, failure's just a stepping stone to oblivion." Jenna rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her grin. Always the optimist. From the corner, Maya Sanchez, the club's manager, surveyed the scene with a clipboard clutched tightly in one hand and a phone wedged between shoulder and ear. Her short bobbin glasses lent her a no-nonsense air, but her eyes softened as she watched the troupe. Maya balanced the impossible keeping the club's finances afloat while nurturing the fragile morale of the comedians. Tonight, she was negotiating with a vendor about overdue payments, her voice steady despite the tightrope she walked. "We need to keep tonight's crowd happy," she said firmly into the phone. "No more delays on the shipment, or we're sunk. The group gathered in the cramped green room, a space just big enough for a handful of nervous souls. Posters of past shows, yellowed and peeling, lined the walls, a testament to glory days now distant. The air buzzed with a cocktail of anticipation and dread. "All right," Max said, standing and pacing. "The punchline is on life support, and we're the doctors with rusty tools. We've got one shot to prove we're not done yet." Jenna nodded, eyes bright. "We'll bring the laughs, the crowd, and maybe a little magic." Her smile faltered for a moment, revealing the exhaustion underneath. Elliot exhaled smoke and shrugged. "Magic's in short supply these days. But hell, we'll make do." Tony clapped a heavy hand on Max's shoulder. "We got this. We're family, right?" Maya smiled faintly, closing her phone. "Family or not, we need a plan." As the first notes of a melancholy jazz tune drifted from the bar's speakers, the troupe prepared to take the stage. The punchline's flickering neon sign outside was more than a warning, it was a challenge. Could a motley crew of misfit comedians keep their sanctuary alive against the city's indifferent tide? The door swung open, and the night began. Max stepped onto the stage, the spotlight harsh and blinding. The room quieted, the few patrons leaning forward expectantly. He cleared his throat, his voice steady but carrying the weight of countless self-doubts. "So, you ever notice how New York is the only place where you can get lost and found in the same block?" He paused for effect, scanning the faces before him. A few tentative chuckles, encouraging enough. "Yeah, I once got lost on my way to a family dinner. My mother still thinks I'm in Queens somewhere, avoiding her." Laughter grew, warmer now. Backstage, Jenna paced, biting her lip. Elliot smoked silently, a ghost of a grin tugging at his lips. Maya monitored the bar, calculating the dwindling cash flow in her mind. Tony bounced in place, ready for his turn, a goofy grin plastered across his face. The night wore on with a patchwork of jokes, some landing, others flopping spectacularly. The club's future was uncertain, but for these few hours, the punchline was alive. Outside, the neon sign buzzed and flickered, stubbornly refusing to go dark. The punchline's neon sign sputtered feebly against the night sky. Its electric hum, a tired soundtrack to another precarious evening in the life of the club. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of stale beer, cigarettes, and the faint, lingering sweetness of spilled popcorn. The worn wooden floor creaked underfoot as patrons shuffled in, each drawn by the flicker of promise and the hope of laughter amid the uncertainty. Tonight was an open mic night, a chaotic mix of hopes and nerves, with the troupe at the heart of the storm. Backstage, Max Harper sat hunched over a battered notebook, his pen scratching hurriedly across the pages. His messy dark hair fell into his eyes as he tried to steady his breathing. The familiar, sardonic laugh caught somewhere deep in his throat. He was the reluctant leader tonight, the de facto captain of a ship struggling to stay afloat. The weight of the club's future pressed down on him, heavier than the leather jacket he wore like armor. Self-doubt gnawed at the edges of his confidence, though his sharp observational humor was ready to be unleashed. "Max, you're up in 5, Maya Sanchez called softly from the side, her voice calm and steady. The club manager was a grounding force in the chaos, her short bobbin glasses making her look both approachable and authoritative. She had the impossible task of keeping the club running, balancing budgets and tempers with equal skill." Max nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Got it." On the stage, Jenna Lee was already warming up the crowd. Her short, curly hair bounced as she moved energetically, colorful outfits brightening the dim room. Her laughter was infectious, ringing out clear and easy, even as she juggled the dual pressures of hosting the night and preparing for her own set. Jenna's optimism was a flame flickering against the encroaching darkness, but even she felt the strain of overcommitting. "All right, folks, welcome to the punchline," Jenna announced, her voice carrying through the small room. "Grab a drink, find a seat, and let's see who's brave enough to make you laugh tonight." The audience responded with polite applause and a few cheers, the nervous energy palpable. Tony Russo, stocky and sporting his trademark backwards baseball cap, was bouncing between tables, offering a boisterous hello and the occasional slapstick pratfall that drew chuckles from the regulars. His physical comedy was a staple, though tonight the laughter felt tentative, as if waiting for something more. As the open mic began, the variety of comedic styles was on full display. Max's set was sharp, his quick thinking and observational humor cutting through the tension. Yet beneath the jokes was a palpable anxiety, a fear that every punchline might be the last chance to prove himself. The audience laughed, but the applause was measured, the fragile state of the club reflected in their cautious response. Jenna's turn followed, her charisma lighting up the stage. She spun stories of identity and dreams with wit and warmth, yet backstage, a glance revealed her exhaustion. The laughter she drew was genuine, but the pace she set was relentless, pushing herself harder than was sustainable. Elliot Brooks took the stage next, his tall, lean frame silhouetted against the dim spotlight. Dressed simply in a tee and jeans, he exuded a dry, sarcastic charm. His deadpan delivery scored hits, but the occasional pause revealed a man wrestling with detachment. The cigarette dangling from his lips was as much a prop as a shield, curling smoke weaving through his words like a veil. The mood shifted when Derek Fields, a rival comic from a nearby club, strode in late, his slick confidence a jarring contrast to the punchline's worn edges. His mocking applause was sharp and deliberate, a reminder that external competition was as fierce as internal struggles. Derek's presence stoked tensions within the troupe, a quiet challenge to their unity. The night spiraled into a mix of laughter and awkward failures. Bombed sets punctuated the evening, the sting of public humiliation piercing the fragile morale. Jenna and Elliot's rivalry simmered beneath the surface, their differing styles and ambitions clashing in subtle jabs and exchanged glances. Max tried to hold the group together, but his tendency to push others away made the task heavier than ever. Backstage, Maya soothed frayed nerves and balanced the club's fragile finances, her pragmatic care a lifeline. Tony's attempts at physical comedy elicited a few laughs, but failed to mask his growing insecurities. The troupe's bonds were tested, the night revealing cracks even as it underscored their shared passion. As the final act stumbled and laughter faded into uneasy murmurs, Max lingered at the edge of the stage, the weight of the club's uncertain future pressing down. The punchline's flickering neon sign outside seemed to echo his doubts. But beneath it all was a stubborn hope or belief that the next laugh might just be the one to save them all. "We'll get there," Max murmured to himself, the words of fragile promise in the dim light. "We have too." And as the crowd filtered out into the cold New York night, the echoes of laughter and the hope for more lingered in the air, fragile but unbroken. Max Harper sat alone at the back corner of the punchline, the worn leather jacket hanging loosely on his frame as his fingers danced hurriedly across the pages of a battered notebook. The dim light flickered intermittently above, casting shadows that played tricks on the peeling wallpaper and uneven floorboards. Beyond the cracked window, the city's restless hum seeped in distant sirens. A late-night saxophone solo from a nearby street, the occasional shout from a passerby. Yet, inside this fragile sanctuary of fading dreams, Max wrestled with memories more turbulent than the city outside. His pen scraped against paper as he tried to capture the gnawing weight in his chest. The words that came were sharp, observational, a hallmark of his style. But tonight, they tasted bitter, laced with an ache he rarely let surface. The strained phone calls from his family, the sharp disappointment in his father's voice when he chose comedy over a real career, the silence from his mother that spoke louder than any argument. These ghosts haunted him, fueling a fear that one misstep here wouldn't just close the club, but also confirm his worst fears about himself. As Max scribbled, fragments of a recent argument with his father replayed in his mind. "You think this joke business will pay the bills?" his father had said, voice tight with frustration. "Maybe it's time you grew up." That sentence had sliced through him, but tonight it also ignited a fierce resolve. Saving the punchline was more than salvaging a building. It was reclaiming his identity, proving that his dreams mattered. Across the club, Jenna Lee paced nervously backstage, her short, curly hair bouncing with each breathless step. Her bright, colorful outfit clashed with the muted hues of the brick wall behind her, a visual metaphor for her turbulent state. Jenna's laughter, usually effortless and infectious, felt brittle tonight. She ran through her set in her head, trying to infuse humor into the rawness of her recent breakup, but each punchline risked falling flat under the weight of her emotions. She paused, fingers trembling slightly as she clutched the microphone stand. The echo of her ex's last words, dismissive, cold, lingered like a shadow. Comedy had always been Jenna's sanctuary, a place where she could shape her story on her own terms. But now, she questioned whether the pain was too fresh, whether her voice could still shine through the heartbreak. Yet, beneath the uncertainty, a flicker of determination burned. She was here to fight for herself, for her friends, and for the punchline. In a quieter corner, Elliot Brooks slouched on a battered couch, the smoke from his ever-present cigarette curling lazily toward the ceiling. His tall, lean frame seemed almost swallowed by the threadbare cushions, a physical manifestation of the weariness gnawing at him. His dry, sarcastic remarks were his shield, a way to keep the world at arm's length. Tonight, however, his usual biting humor softened as he tossed a joke toward Maya, the club's manager, who sat nearby, her eyes warm with concern. "I'm telling you, Maya," he drawled, voice low but edged with something less cynical, "if this place closes, I might have to actually get a real job." "Can you imagine that?" Maya smiled faintly, shaking her head. "We're not giving up yet, Elliot. Not on my watch." The cigarette smoke mingled with the faint aroma of stale beer and old wood, the scent of a place that had seen better days, but still held stories worth fighting for. Elliot's guarded demeanor hinted at the cracks forming in his armor, the possibility of rediscovering the joy that once fueled his career. Meanwhile, in the cramped office that doubled as the club's financial nerve center, Maya Sanchez sifted through a mountain of bills and receipts. Her short bob framed a face etched with worry lines, yet softened by a resolute calm. The glow of a solitary desk lamp illuminated the papers as she adjusted her glasses and scribbled numbers. Every late payment, every overdue notice was a small battle in the war to keep the punchline afloat. Tony Russo burst into the room with his usual boisterous energy, the baseball cap on his head turned backwards, as always. His stocky frame carried a physical comedy charm, and tonight, his jokes landed with better timing than his recent slapstick attempts on stage. "Hey Maya," Tony grinned, dropping a fist bump on the desk. "If we don't make it, I'm gonna haunt this place as a ghost comedian. Bet I'll be the funniest spirit you ever saw." Maya chuckled, the tension easing for a moment. Keep dreaming, Tony. But thanks for the laugh. These moments of camaraderie were fragile but vital. The glue holding together a group frayed by personal demons and external threats. The club's survival wasn't just a financial calculation, it was a testament to their shared resilience. Later that evening, as the troupe gathered for a brief meeting, Max finally broke the silence that had long hung between them. His voice was quieter than usual, tinged with vulnerability. "I know I've been pushing everyone away," he admitted. "But this place, this family, it's all I've got. I'm scared, yeah, but I want to fight. Not just for the club, but for all of us." Jenna nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm scared too, but maybe that's what makes us stronger. We've all got our pain, our doubts. Maybe that's the comedy, finding the light in the dark." Elliot exhaled a plume of smoke, a rare softness in his gaze. "I'm in, for the laughs, for the fight, for whatever's left of us." Maya smiled, feeling the weight of their words settle into a fragile hope. "Then let's get to work." As the night deepened, the group dispersed into the quiet hum of the city beyond. Each carried their burdens, fears, regrets, hopes, but also a new sense of purpose. The Punchline was more than a club. It was their dream, their refuge, their proving ground, and they were not ready to let it go. The flickering neon outside buzzed softly, its uncertain glow a beacon for those who dared to dream against the odds. But as dawn approached, the question lingered in the cool air. Could they turn their dreams into reality before the lights went out for good? The night had been long, but the fight was just beginning. The Punchline's back room was a chaos of clatter and clamor, a microcosm of the club's precarious state. Around a scarred wooden table, cluttered with coffee cups, crumpled napkins, and half-eaten sandwiches, the troupe sat in a haphazard circle, faces lit by the yellow glow of an overhead lamp that buzzed faintly. The air was thick with a mixture of stale smoke and desperation. Max Harper raked a hand through his messy dark hair, eyes sharp but weary. "We need something big," he said, voice low but urgent. "Themed nights, guest stars, viral stunts, whatever it takes." Jenna Lee bounced slightly in her chair, her short curls catching the light as she leaned forward. "What about a comedy through the decades night? We dress up, do sets inspired by different eras. It's fun, it's fresh, it's something people can Instagram." Elliot Brooks, tall and lean in his plain tee and jeans, exhaled a plume of smoke from his cigarette and scoffed. "Great, because nothing says save the club like a bunch of amateurs playing dress-up." "Come on, Elliot," Jenna shot back, her eyes flashing. "Maybe if you stopped being such a downer, you'd see the potential." The tension between them was palpable, a simmering undercurrent that had become all too familiar. Max tried to mediate, but his own frustration made it hard to find the right words. Maya Sanchez, the club's manager and emotional anchor, sat quietly at the side, her glasses slipping down her nose as she reviewed the dwindling ledger of finances. Tony Russo, stocky and wearing his usual backwards baseball cap, paced the room, occasionally throwing out slapstick suggestions that earned half-hearted chuckles. Just as Max was about to propose a compromise, Maya's phone buzzed. She glanced down, her face tightening. "It's here," she said softly, holding up a crisp white envelope. The room fell silent. "Victor Crane's legal team. They're moving forward with eviction proceedings. We've got 30 days. A collective breath was sucked in. The Punchline's fate had never felt more real, more imminent. Max's eyes darkened. "We're not going down without a fight," he declared, "but we have to get our act together fast." The next hours passed in a blur of ideas, some brilliant, others desperate. Jenna and Elliot's rivalry flared anew, each pushing harder to claim the spotlight, to prove their worth not just to the audience, but to themselves. Max struggled to keep the group united, his usual sardonic humor giving way to a rare vulnerability, as he confessed his fears of losing the club that had become his second home. Maya worked tirelessly behind the scenes, balancing calls with lawyers and potential sponsors, while Tony's slapstick routines brought brief moments of levity that reminded everyone why they loved what they did despite the odds. Yet the shadow of Victor Crane loomed large, his cold eyes and sharp suits a constant reminder that progress and profit threatened to erase their world. As the night deepened, the troupe found themselves standing at a crossroads. Their dreams and friendships were on the line, tested like never before. Could they channel their frustrations into fuel, their rivalry into collaboration? The punchline flickered outside, its neon sign sputtering uncertainly, a beacon of both hope and fragility. In the end, the chapter closed not with resolution, but with a question hanging thick in the smoky air. Could laughter truly be enough to save a dream when the very ground beneath it was being ripped away? The answer, like the punchline of a difficult joke, was still out of reach, waiting for its moment to land. And as Max scribbled furiously in his battered notebook, searching for the words that might hold them together, the city outside pulsed with indifferent life funnyware, perhaps of the small battleground glowing faintly beneath one flickering neon light. The punchline's battered neon sign flickered erratically as dusk seeped into the New York City streets, casting a weary blue glow over the club's peeling facade. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the faint scent of stale beer. Tonight's open mic was supposed to be the lifeblood of the struggling venue, a chance for the troupe to remind the city why the punchline still mattered. Instead, it was shaping up to be a night to forget. Tony Russo bounded onto the stage first, his usual boisterous grin faltering under the weight of the sparse crowd. His routine and elaborate physical comedy bit involving a fake slip and a juggling act with rubber chickens began with a clumsy confidence. But as the minutes dragged on, the laughter grew thin, replaced by uncomfortable silence and shifting feet. The spotlight flickered above him, spotlighting his red face as he struggled to salvage the set. Backstage, Max Harper's hands trembled as he flipped through his battered notebook, the pages filled with scribbled observations and half-formed jokes. The muffled groans and scattered chuckles from the stage clawed at his confidence. He forced himself to breathe, trying to summon the sharp wit and quick thinking that had once been his armor. But tonight, the mask of sardonic control felt heavier than ever. Jenna Lee paced nervously just beyond the curtain, her colorful outfit a stark contrast to the club's grim ambience. Her usual infectious laughter was subdued, replaced by a tight-lipped focus. She knew the stakes were high, not just for the club, but for herself. Balancing ambition with the recent sting of a breakup, she was desperate to prove her voice mattered. As Tony's set floundered, she clenched her fists, ready to step up and shift the night's momentum. Elliot Brooks lounged in the shadows near the bar, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. His dry, sarcastic commentary had earned him a reputation, but tonight even his usual deadpan delivery felt tired. He was guarded, retreating into cynicism to mask the creative burnout gnawing at him. The weight of past failures and a high-profile flop loomed large, and the pressure to reclaim his confidence was suffocating. The night spiraled quickly, as more performers bombed spectacularly forgotten punchlines. Awkward pauses and misplaced jokes, the fragile morale of the punchline's troupe began to crack. Whispers and frustrated glances exchanged backstage grew louder. The audience, once eager, now shifted restlessly in their seats, their enthusiasm fading like the sputtering neon outside. Midway through the chaos, Jenna's patience snapped. As Elliot took the stage for his set, the tension between them was palpable. His cutting sarcasm clashed with her vibrant optimism, a rivalry simmering beneath the surface for weeks. When Elliot's delivery took a bitter tone aimed at the club's struggling state, Jenna interrupted, stepping forward with a sharp retort that stunned the room. "Maybe if you stopped acting like the world owed you a comeback, Elliot, you'd remember why we're all here," she said, voice ringing clear in the sudden silence. The confrontation laid bare their frustrations and fears, the audience caught in the charged moment. Backstage, Max felt the sting of Jenna's words and the weight of his own insecurities pressing down. His fear of failure gnawed at him, threatening to unravel the fragile threads holding the troupe together. Maya Sanchez, ever the pragmatic manager, moved swiftly through the chaos, fielding calls, calming tempers, and juggling the club's precarious finances. Her exhaustion was evident, but so was her unwavering resolve. Tony returned to the wings, his usual bravado diminished. His slapstick routine's failure echoed in his mind, deepening his insecurities about his place in the comedy world. The night's disasters left the troupe fractured and vulnerable, the dream of saving the punchline slipping further from reach. As the final act stumbled to a close and the last patrons filtered out into the cold city night, the comedians gathered in a tense silence. The sting of public humiliation mingled with raw personal frustrations. Yet amid the broken bonds and battered spirits, a flicker of determination remained. They had faced their worst and, somehow, still clung to the fragile hope that laughter could heal what was broken. Max finally closed his notebook with a sigh, meeting Jenna's and Elliot's eyes. The unspoken question hung in the air. Could they find a way back from this low point? Could their shared passion and humor withstand the pressure and pain? The punchline's neon sign buzzed faintly outside, flickering uncertainly, a mirror to their battered but unbroken hearts. The night had been a disaster, but the fight was far from over. And somewhere in the shadows of broken jokes and fractured friendships, the seed of resilience was quietly taking root. As the troupe dispersed for the night, Max lingered by the stage, the battered notebook clutched tightly. "Tomorrow," he whispered to himself, "we try again." Outside, the city pulsed with its relentless rhythm, indifferent yet full of possibility. And somewhere in its heart, the punchline flickered on, waiting for its next laugh. The punchline's back room smelled of stale coffee, old cigarette smoke, and the faintest trace of spilled beer, comforting in its familiarity, unsettling in its evidence of late-night worries. Max Harper slumped onto the cracked leather couch, the one spot in the club that hadn't been replaced since the 90s, his battered notebook resting limply on his knee. The scribbled pages inside held more than jokes. They held the weight of his fears, his hopes, and the fragile thread that still connected him to this ragtag family. Jenna Lee perched on the edge of a folding chair, her colorful outfit a sharp contrast to the dim surroundings. Her eyes, usually bright and quick to laugh, were softer now, focused on Max in a way that suggested she saw more than the sardonic front he usually wore. Elliot Brooks leaned against the peeling wall, arms crossed, but visibly less guarded than in weeks past. The tense distance that had grown between them since their public confrontation had begun to thaw. "I don't know how to fix this," Max confessed, voice low but steady. "I've been running scared, trying to be the guy who keeps it all together, but maybe I'm just scared I'm gonna lose everything." Jenna's lips twitched into a sympathetic smile. "It's okay to be scared. Hell, it's brave to say it out loud." Elliot nodded, the smoke from his half-smoked cigarette curling in the stale air. We've all been hiding behind jokes. Maybe it's time to be honest, even if it's messy. For the first time in months, the three of them sat, not as performers competing for laughs or status, but as friends bound by shared dreams and vulnerabilities. The tension that had fractured their group began to knit itself back together in the quiet of that cramped room. Meanwhile, Jenna wrestled with her own internal battle. In her cramped apartment a few blocks away, the glow of her phone illuminated swatches of fabric and scribbled notes. Invitations to gigs, calls from agents, texts from friends, each one a tempting promise and a potential trap. She had always been the energetic optimist, the one who could juggle a dozen things at once. But the recent breakup had left cracks in her armor. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, Jenna took a deep breath, silencing the buzzing phone. "I can't do everything," she whispered to herself, a rare moment of self-care that felt both foreign and necessary. Her comedy was her lifeline, but she had to learn to protect it without losing herself in the process. Across town, Elliot found solace near the neon sign of the Punchline, its erratic flicker mirroring his own uncertain mood. The cold air nipped at his face as he pulled his simple tee tighter and let out a dry chuckle, a joke forming in his mind. It was small, but it was a spark of joy he hadn't felt since the slump began. In that moment, surrounded by the city's restless hum, Elliot reconnected with the passion that had once fueled his rise. Back inside the club, Maya Sanchez sat at her cluttered desk, the weight of unpaid bills and looming deadlines pressing down on her. Her glasses caught the low light as she methodically flipped through the paperwork. Each figure a reminder of the personal sacrifices she was making. Formerly an actress, Maya's fierce protectiveness of the Punchline was born from love and necessity. Without her steady hand, the club would have crumbled long ago. Tony Russo's boisterous laughter echoed faintly from the bar area, a reminder that even amid struggle, moments of levity persisted. His attempts at physical comedy had faltered recently, but his loyalty never wavered. He was the heart and brawn of the troupe, grounding them when tempers flared and spirits flagged. Together, they formed a patchwork promise not of certainty, but of commitment. The fractured friendships and personal struggles that had threatened to unravel them were met with honesty and effort. Max's rare openness became the turning point, a beacon for the troupe to rebuild trust and find new strength. Yet the stakes were clear. The Punchline's survival was not guaranteed. Financial pressures loomed like a storm on the horizon, and the threat of eviction by Victor Crane's legal team was a constant shadow. Still, in that room filled with worn-out furniture and broken dreams, the comedians found a fragile hope. As Max closed his notebook for the night, a sardonic grin flickered across his face. "Maybe we're not done yet." Jenna smiled, the weight on her shoulders feeling a little lighter. "No, we're just getting started." And Elliot, inhaling deeply, flicked his cigarette ash into an empty jar, ready to find his voice once more. The Punchline wasn't just a club, it was their home. And tonight, amidst the patchwork promises and quiet resilience, it was alive again. But the question remained, could this fragile hope hold against the mounting pressures? Only time would tell, and the comedians were ready to fight for every laugh along the way. As the city lights shimmered beyond the cracked windows, the troupe prepared for the uncertain road ahead together. The Punchline buzzed with an energy that had been absent for months. The air was thick with sweat, anticipation, and the faint scent of stale beer mixed with the unmistakable aroma of old wood and fading paint. The flickering neon sign outside, usually a pale beacon struggling against the dark New York night, now seemed to glow with renewed life, as if the club itself was holding its breath. Backstage, the cramped space was a chaotic symphony of nervous pacing, last-minute joke revisions, and the clatter of props. Max Harper leaned against the peeling wall, fingers twitching as he flipped through his battered notebook. His dark hair was tousled, and the familiar worn leather jacket hung off his slender frame like a second skin. Around him, the troupe prepared for the night's performance with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Jenna Lee, brimming with her usual infectious energy, adjusted the hem of her vibrant blouse, her short curly hair bouncing as she laughed nervously at a joke Tony Russo had just cracked. "You sure the crowd's going to show up tonight?" Tony asked, his voice a low rumble, the backward baseball cap shading his earnest eyes. "They will," Maya Sanchez said firmly, standing nearby with her clipboard and glasses perched on the bridge of her nose. Her short bob framed a face set with determined pragmatism. "We've got a surprise guest," the words out. Max raised an eyebrow but didn't ask for details. He trusted Maya's instincts. She was the glue that held the punchline together, the pragmatic heart behind the chaos. The door to the cramped green room creaked open, and a hush fell over the small circle. In stepped the celebrity comedian, a figure whose name alone had sent ripples through the New York comedy scene. Stylishly dressed, their confident smile was effortless, the kind that made people lean in and listen even before a word was spoken. "Everyone," Maya announced, her voice steady but excited, "please welcome our guest of honor." Jenna's eyes sparkled, and even Elliot Brooks, tall and lean as ever in his simple tee and jeans, allowed a small smirk to tug at his lips. The veteran comic, usually wrapped in layers of dry sarcasm and guarded detachment, seemed momentarily disarmed by the presence. The celebrity took the stage to a swell of applause that filled every crevice of the aging club. The crowd's energy shifted palpably, the usual mix of hopeful regulars and curious newcomers, now charged with an electric enthusiasm. The punchline felt alive again. Max watched from the wings, feeling a rare flicker of hope. The celebrity's set was sharp, delivered with practiced ease, yet punctuated by moments of genuine warmth toward the local scene. They praised the punchline's gritty charm and the resilience of its troupe, a nod that sent a wave of pride through the performers. When it was time for Max to take the stage, he felt the weight of the moment press on his shoulders. The applause was louder, the lights brighter, but beneath it all was a whisper of doubt that never quite left him. As he delivered his set, his usual sardonic humor sharpened by the crowd's energy, he caught Jenna's encouraging smile and Elliot's subtle nod. For once, the humor felt effortless. After the show, the club hummed with excitement. Media folks gathered outside, snapping photos and scribbling notes. Maya moved through the crowd, managing questions and smoothing over logistics with practiced ease. Tony was in his element, basking in the renewed attention, his boisterous laughter echoing down the hallway. But away from the noise and laughter, Max found a quiet corner outside the club. The cold New York night pressed in, breath visible in the air as he pulled a crisp envelope from his jacket pocket. The embossed letterhead bore the name of a prestigious venue, an invitation to perform on a much larger stage. His fingers trembled as he read the formal words, the promise of opportunity shimmering against the bittersweet backdrop of the punchline's uncertain future. Loyalty warred with ambition in his chest. Could he walk away from the place that had given him his start? Could he leave behind the friends who had become his family? Meanwhile, miles above the city streets, Victor Crane met with his legal team in a sleek office tower. The city lights sprawled beneath him like a glittering web of possibilities and profits. His cold eyes reflected the impersonal gleam of spreadsheets and blueprints, symbols of redevelopment that spelled doom for the punchline. "Time's running out," Crane said, voice smooth but edged with steel. They don't know it yet, but the neighborhood is changing. The punchline is just a relic in the path of progress. His team nodded, ready to move forward with eviction notices and legal pressure, the machinery of gentrification grinding inexorably onward. Back at the club, the troupe gathered one last time before heading home, the night's glow still lingering in their eyes. Jenna's optimism flared brighter than ever, but even she couldn't mask the tension that tightened their smiles. Max folded the invitation letter carefully, slipping it back into his jacket. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the fight to save the punchline was far from over. As the neon sign flickered once more, casting a surreal glow on the cracked pavement below, the comedians stood together, a ragtag family bound by laughter, dreams, and the fragile hope that tomorrow might yet bring a new beginning. The back room of the punchline was a collage of chaos and faded dreams. Scattered across the battered wooden table were crumpled napkins, half-empty coffee cups, and Max Harper's ever-present battered notebook, its pages filled with sharp observations and jokes that sometimes felt like lifelines. Tonight, however, the usual scribbles were overshadowed by a crisp, cream-colored envelope, an invitation that could change everything. Max fingered the edges of the letter, the weight of its promise pressing down on him. A prestigious venue, an opportunity to perform on a stage that could launch his career beyond the dim lights of the punchline. Yet, as the neon sign outside flickered uncertainly, so did Max's resolve. The club was more than just a stage. It was a sanctuary for this ragtag group of comedians, a place where their fractured dreams found a semblance of unity. He heard footsteps approaching and looked up to see Jenna Lee's vibrant presence filling the doorway. Her short curly hair bounced with energy, and her colorful outfit stood out sharply against the club's gritty surroundings. Jenna's eyes locked on the envelope with a mixture of hope and concern. "Max," she began, voice steady but urgent, "we can't keep treading water here. That invitation, it's a sign. We need to push forward, take bigger steps. The punchline's future depends on it." Max sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know, Jenna, but if I leave, what happens to the club?" "To us," Jenna stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "We're stronger than that, but we need to believe it, all of us. Especially Elliot." Before Max could respond, the sharp scrape of a cigarette dragging against the ashtray cut through the room. Elliot Brooks emerged from the shadows, tall and lean, his usual simple tee and jeans blending into the club's worn backdrop. The smoke curled around him like a shield as he took a slow drag. "So, the prodigal leader gets a shiny offer," Elliot said dryly, eyes narrowing. "Funny how the big leagues always want you after you're already drowning here." Jenna's eyes flashed with irritation. "It's not about leaving anyone behind, Elliot. It's about growing, about survival." Elliot flicked ash onto the floor, his voice low but cutting. "Survival's a joke when you're selling out the people who got you started." The tension thickened, the room seemingly shrinking as old wounds and new ambitions clashed. Max's hesitation, Jenna's determination, and Elliot's cynicism formed a volatile triangle that threatened to unravel the fragile bonds holding the troupe together. Outside, the muffled sound of laughter and applause from the club's main room contrasted sharply with the storm brewing behind the door. Maya Sanchez, ever the pragmatic manager with her short bob and glasses, entered quietly, her presence immediately grounding. Tony Russo, stocky and boisterous in his trademark backward baseball cap, followed, sensing the rising heat. "Enough," Maya said firmly, stepping between the trio. "We're all fighting for the same thing. But this division, it's exactly what Victor Crane wants." Tony nodded, his usual loud energy tempered by seriousness. Yeah, we're not just comics, we're a family. And families argue, but we don't tear each other apart. Jenna took a deep breath, her assertiveness softening into something more conciliatory. We have to find a way forward. Together, Elliot dropped his cigarette, grinding it underfoot reluctantly. Maybe, but it's going to take more than speeches. Max finally stood, the invitation in his hand folded but not yet discarded. We've hit a crossroads. But the choice isn't just about me or the club. It's about who we want to be separately and together. The room fell silent, the weight of Max's words settling among them. Outside, the neon signs sputtered once more, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow that seemed to echo the uncertainty and hope inside. As the night deepened, the troupe lingered in the back room, voices lowering from confrontation to conversation. Plans were whispered, doubts voiced, and tentative agreements made. The battle for the punchline's future was far from over, but in this moment of crossroads and confrontations, the seeds of renewed unity were sown. And as Max looked around at the faces of his friends, flawed fierce and fiercely loyal, he realized that no matter the outcome, their story was just beginning. The flickering neon outside blinked once, then steadied, as if winking in solidarity with the troupe inside, a small, stubborn light refusing to be extinguished. The punchline's backstage was unusually stifling that evening, the air thick with an almost tangible tension that none of its usual noise, clinking glasses, muffled laughter, the buzz of neon could penetrate. Jenna Lee and Elliot Brooks stood mere feet apart, their faces flushed with frustration, voices sharp and clipped as they volleyed barbs masked thinly as jokes. The rest of the troupe hovered uneasily nearby, caught in the undertow of a rivalry that had been simmering for weeks but now boiled over in the claustrophobic confines of their shared sanctuary. "I'm telling you, Elliot," Jenna said, her voice rising just enough to be heard over the hum of the aging air conditioner. "The audience wants fresh, vibrant energy, not deadpan gloom. If I'm not the headliner next month, this club's going to lose its heartbeat." Elliot smirked, folding his arms across his lean frame. "And fresh and vibrant means what, exactly?" Shouting louder, jumping around like a cartoon. "There's more to comedy than sugar and sparkles, Jenna. You'll learn that if you stick around long enough." Max Harper watched from the sidelines, his fingers twitching as if itching to interject, but weighed down by the familiar ache of self-doubt. He had always been the de facto leader, the voice of reason when chaos threatened to tip over their fragile world. But tonight, even he felt like a bystander, powerless to bridge the widening gap between his two brightest stars. "Enough," Max finally said, stepping forward, his voice low but firm, carrying the weight of exhaustion and authority. "This isn't just about who gets top billing. It's about keeping this place alive. We're all on the same side." Jenna shot him a glare, her short curly hair catching the dim light as she turned away. Elliot's expression hardened, but he said nothing, retreating into silence. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, until the club's door creaked open, breaking the spell. Maya Sanchez entered, clutching a crisp envelope that seemed too heavy with bad news. Her short bob framed a face set in determined lines, glasses perched low on her nose. Tony Russo followed behind, his usual boisterous energy dimmed by the gravity of the moment. "I need everyone in the office," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. The troupe shuffled after her, the weight of anticipation pressing them forward. Inside the cramped office, Maya unfolded the eviction notice with deliberate care, the legal jargon stark against the worn wooden desk. Tony leaned against the wall, fists clenched, while Max paced slowly, the edges of his worn leather jacket brushing the floor. Victor Crane's team is serious, Maya said quietly, eyes sweeping over each of them. This is their final notice. We have 30 days. A heavy silence engulfed the room. The punchline they'd been fighting to save was now a ticking clock, counting down to oblivion. Jenna's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she squared her shoulders. Then we fight, she declared. We do everything we can to keep this place open. Elliot exhaled sharply, the first crack in his usually impenetrable cynicism. We'd better, because if this place dies, so do all of us. Max stopped pacing, looking around at the faces of his friends and rivals alike. For all their differences and conflicts, they shared a fragile dream. The kind that kept them coming back to the mic night after night, chasing laughter in a city that often seemed indifferent. All right, Max said, voice steadying. We put aside the rivalry. We pull together for the punchline. As the neon sign outside flickered uncertainly against the gathering dusk, the troop gathered closer, the fragile threads of their friendship stretched but not broken. They stood at the edge of an abyss, the final eviction notice a stark reminder of the fight ahead. The power struggle wasn't over, but for now, survival demanded a truce. And beneath the tension, a spark of hope flickered, small and fragile, but stubbornly alive, just like the punchline itself. The coming days would test every ounce of their resilience, forcing them to confront not only the threat from without, but the fractures within. But if they could endure the clash of egos and fears, maybe, just maybe, they could reclaim the laughter that once filled these walls and save the club that had become their home. As Max scribbled a plan in his battered notebook, the unmistakable echo of a sardonic laugh broke the silence, a reminder that humor, even under pressure, was their greatest weapon. And with that, the troop prepared to face the uncertain night ahead. The punchline's future was hanging by a thread. But in the heart of New York City, where dreams collided with harsh realities, the fight was far from over. Would they find a way to unite and survive? The next move was theirs, and the stakes had never been higher. The punchline breathed a tired, uneven breath that night, its flickering neon sign outside struggling to hold a steady glow against the encroaching darkness of the city. Inside, the air was thick with tension and exhaustion, the usual buzz of laughter and applause dampened by the weight of uncertainty. Backstage, Jenna Lee sat curled on the cracked leather couch that had seen better days. Her colorful outfit a stark contrast to the muted shadows around her. Her short, curly hair was damp, not from sweat but from tears she refused to shed openly. The laughter from the stage was a distant echo now, fading into a silence that felt as heavy as the city itself. Jenna's set had been a brave effort, but the jokes about her recent breakup fell flat, the audience polite but distracted. She had tried to mask her pain with humor, but as the spotlight dimmed and the next comic took the stage, the fragile facade crumbled. She exhaled softly, the weight of loneliness pressing down. Maya Sanchez noticed immediately, approaching quietly with a bottle of water and a comforting smile. "Hey," Maya said gently, sitting beside her. "You okay?" Jenna shook her head, voice catching. "I'm trying, Maya. It's like every laugh feels like a lie sometimes." Maya nodded, understanding more than Jenna could say. "This club, this family, it's tough, but we're tougher. You don't have to carry it alone." Their whispered conversation was a bomb, a reminder that beneath the punchlines were people struggling to hold it together. Outside, Max Harper leaned against the cold brick wall, the neon sign flickering erratically above him. His dark hair was a mess, and his worn leather jacket did little to shield him from the biting night air. The phone in his hand buzzed again, the screen lighting up with a call from his father. Max hesitated before answering, the tension in his shoulders visible even in the dim streetlight. "Max," his father's voice was low, edged with years of disappointment and unspoken regrets. "You need to think about what's next. That club won't save you forever." Max's jaw tightened. "I'm not done yet. Just don't get stuck, son." The call ended, leaving Max staring at the phone as if it might offer answers he didn't have. The weight of family expectations, old wounds, and his own fear of failure pressed heavily on him. Yet, beneath the fatigue, a stubborn fire glimmered, the same fire that had brought him to the punchline years ago. Inside the club, the dim light barely touched Elliot Brooks as he sat in the corner, a cigarette burning slowly between his fingers. His tall, lean frame was slouched, the simple tee and jeans doing little to mask the weariness etched into his face. His notebook lay open but blank, the pages refusing to yield the sharp jokes and biting observations he was known for. The hum of the empty club was a stark contrast to the roaring laughter he once commanded. Elliot exhaled a plume of smoke, watching it curl toward the cracked ceiling. His creative well had run dry, and with it, his confidence. The memories of past successes and recent failures tangled together, creating a knot of cynicism and despair. Yet, somewhere beneath the surface, a faint pulse of hope lingered, waiting for a spark to reignite the joy he once found in comedy. In the cramped office, Maya shuffled through a mountain of bills and invoices under the harsh fluorescent light. Her short bob framed a face set with determination, glasses perched just so as she juggled numbers that refused to balance. The finances were tight, the club's survival hanging by a thread. Yet, her pragmatic nature refused to yield to despair. The door burst open, and Tony Russo's loud voice filled the room. "Hey, boss lady, I brought donuts." Maya couldn't help but smile at the stocky man's boisterous energy, his backwards baseball cap a familiar sight. Tony's attempts to lighten the mood were sometimes clumsy, but his loyalty was undeniable. "Thanks, Tony," Maya replied, setting aside the papers. "We need all the good vibes we can get." Tony grinned, plopping down beside her. "And maybe I'll try some new bits tonight. No more just slapstick for me. I want to be taken seriously." Maya raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. "I like the sound of that." As the night deepened, the comedians of the punchline faced their inner demons with varying degrees of success. Jenna's quiet breakdown backstage revealed a vulnerability she rarely showed. Max's strained conversation with his father forced a reckoning with his past. Elliot's solitude and creative block hinted at the need for rediscovery. Maya's tireless management underscored the precariousness of their shared dream, while Tony's earnest desire for growth added a spark of hope. The club itself seemed to hold its breath, the flickering lights mirroring the fragile hope that bound them together. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges that threatened to unravel their unity. Yet beneath the surface, the pulse of laughter and friendship remained, waiting for the moment to shine again. And as the city outside roared on, the punchline stood as a testament to resilience, a battered beacon for those who dared to dream in the face of fading light. The night ended not with a bang, but a quiet promise. They would face whatever came next together, even if the future was still shrouded in shadows. "We're not done yet," Max whispered to himself, the words catching in the cold air. Not by a long shot. The punchline's neon sign flickered once more, steadying for a moment before dipping into darkness, then glowing anew, faint but defiant, as if to say, "We're still here." The punchline's backstage was thick with a mixture of stale cigarette smoke, spilled coffee, and the faint, bittersweet scent of sweat and nerves. The room, cramped and peeling at the edges, was cluttered with remnants of past shows, torn posters, discarded joke sheets, and a half-empty bottle of cheap whiskey that had seen better days. Under the harsh glare of a single bare bulb, 5 figures circled the chipped wooden table, their faces etched with exhaustion, frustration, and the fragile hope that had not yet been extinguished. Max Harper sat slouched, his worn leather jacket creaking as he shifted nervously. His dark hair was tousled, eyes shadowed but alert. The usual sardonic smile was absent, replaced by an uncharacteristic tension. Across from him, Jenna Lee's vibrant curls seemed almost luminous in the dim light, her colorful outfit a beacon of energy amid the gloom. Elliot Brooks leaned against the wall, tall and lean, arms crossed, a cigarette dangling loosely from his fingers, his expression unreadable but his eyes betraying a guarded weariness. Maya Sanchez, the club's manager and emotional anchor, sat upright, glasses perched low, her short bob framing a face marked by determination and worry. Tony Russo, stocky and ever boisterous, wore his baseball cap backward, his usual loud grin tempered by the gravity of the moment. "We need to talk," Max began, voice rough but steady. The others leaned in, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "The eviction notice isn't just a scare tactic. Victor Crane's team means business. If we don't pull something off soon, the punchline's done." Jenna's eyes flashed with fierce determination. "Then we give them a show they can't ignore. Something bold, something that reminds New York why this place matters." Elliot snorted quietly. "Bold? We can't even get through an open mic without half the acts bombing." "I know," Max said, rubbing his forehead. "But this is different. This is our last shot." Maya folded her hands tightly. "I've been crunching numbers. We're bleeding money fast. But if we can pack the house for this showcase, get some media attention, maybe even a celebrity drop-in, we might just scrape by." Tony punched the table lightly. "Then let's make sure everyone knows it's the event to be at. No more half-hearted jokes or slapstick fails. This is the big league." The room fell into a charged silence. Each of them wrestled with the weight of the moment and the ghosts of their past failures. Max's thoughts drifted to the opportunity he had once walked away from, the promise of a career that now seemed a lifetime ago. Jenna recalled the sting of her recent breakup, the way it had shaken her confidence but also sharpened her voice. Elliot's cynicism momentarily cracked as he remembered why he had fallen in love with comedy in the first place, the thrill of a laugh, the connection with an audience. "We can't do this alone," Maya said softly. "We're a mess, sure, but that's what makes us real. That's what makes the punchline special." Max nodded slowly, the familiar spark of leadership rekindling. "All right, we put the past behind us. We come together. We fight for this place, for our dreams." Jenna grinned, her optimism infectious. "Then let's get to work." As the meeting broke up, the air felt lighter, charged not with despair but with cautious hope. The comedians scattered to their corners of the club, each carrying the fragile flame of possibility. Tonight had been the reckoning, the moment they faced their fears and chose to stand together, however imperfectly, against the tide. Outside, the city hummed with indifferent energy. The punchline's neon sign flickered uncertainly, but inside, the troops' laughter and resolve began to stitch together the fragile seams of their shared dream. Tomorrow's battles awaited, but for now, they had taken the first, hardest step. Max lingered a moment, looking at the battered notebook in his hand. He scribbled a line, a joke born from the night's tension. It was rough, unpolished, but it was theirs. And maybe, just maybe, it was enough. The night was far from over. the air inside. The punchline was thick with anticipation and the faint scent of stale beer mixed with the dusty promise of a new beginning. Under the tired glow of the dimmed amber bulbs that hung crookedly from the ceiling, the worn wooden stage beckoned Max Harper like a challenge he wasn't sure he was ready to meet. Tonight's rehearsal wasn't just another run-through. It was a crucible where past failures and future hopes would collide. Max stood center stage, notebook clutched loosely in one hand, his other hand twitching with a nervous energy he rarely allowed himself to show. The leather jacket he wore had seen better nights, much like himself, but it was his armor, and tonight he needed all the protection it could offer. He cleared his throat and began, voice low and uneven at first. The jokes were sharp, as always, but the usual sardonic edge gave way to something more fragile, a confession veiled in humor. "I used to think failing was just a punchline waiting to happen," Max said, eyes flicking nervously toward the back of the room where Jenna Lee and Elliot Brooks sat watching. "Turns out, it's more like a recurring nightmare you can't wake up from." Jenna's face softened, her short curls bouncing as she laughed quietly, while Elliot's usual impassive expression cracked just enough to reveal a hint of empathy beneath the cynicism. Max took a deep breath, his voice gaining steadiness. "But maybe the joke's on me, because here I am, still standing on this rickety stage, trying to find the punchline that makes it all worth it." The room held its breath for a beat longer than expected. Then Jenna clapped softly, breaking the tension with her infectious optimism. "That's the Max we know." Backstage, the cluttered nook where the troupe gathered was alive with quiet energy. Notebooks lay open, scribbled with half-finished bits and crossed-out lines, while half-empty coffee cups and empty water bottles littered the makeshift tables. Jenna leaned forward, rubbing her temples as exhaustion threatened to overtake her usual spark. "I can't keep burning the candle at both ends," she muttered, her voice tinged with frustration. "But if I slow down, won't I lose momentum?" Maya Sanchez, ever the pragmatic manager with her short bob and glasses perched on her nose, smiled gently as she handed Jenna a fresh cup of herbal tea. "Balance isn't about losing momentum," she said firmly. "It's about pacing the race so you actually cross the finish line." Jenna took a sip, the warmth spreading through her like a quiet reassurance. "Thanks, Maya. Sometimes I forget that keeping the club alive means keeping ourselves alive, too." Meanwhile, near the battered bar that bore the scars of years gone by, Elliot Brooks stood with a cigarette dangling loosely between his fingers. His tall, lean frame was relaxed in a way that was new, less guarded, less sarcastic. When Tony Russo, the stocky, baseball-capped comic, stumbled through a clumsy physical gag during rehearsal, Elliot chuckled genuinely, the sound low and rare. "You're terrible," Elliot said, with mock severity, "but somehow it's working." Tony grinned, a mix of relief and pride filling his eyes. "I'll take terrible if it gets a laugh." The camaraderie was fragile but real, a tentative thread weaving through the group's collective exhaustion and hope. In the cramped office behind the club, Maya paced, phone pressed to her ear. Bills and schedules were strewn across the desk, a testament to the delicate balancing act she performed daily. Her voice was steady but worn as she negotiated late into the night, securing last-minute resources and concessions to ensure the club's readiness. "We're doing everything we can," she said quietly to herself after hanging up. "This place deserves that much." The night stretched on, the troupe's rehearsals punctuated by moments of breakthrough and setback. Max's willingness to bear his insecurities shifted the group's dynamic. Trust began to replace suspicion and rivalry. Jenna's newfound balance allowed her to shine without burning out, while Elliot's softened cynicism rekindled his passion for the craft. Maya's sacrifices underscored the stakes beyond the stage, and Tony's determination added a vital spark of energy. As the last notes of laughter faded into the silence of the empty club, a tentative hope settled over the punchline. The troupe was not perfect, far from it, but they were beginning to understand that their strength lay not just in individual talent, but in the bonds they forged through shared struggle. Max closed his battered notebook. The scribbles inside, less a record of failed jokes, and more a map of their collective journey. "We've got one shot," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "Let's make it count." Outside, the neon sign flickered on, its uncertain glow a fragile beacon in the New York night. Inside, the laughter was no longer just a sound, but a promise that even in the face of uncertainty, they would stand together, ready to face whatever came next. But as the troupe dispersed into the night, each carrying their own doubts and hopes, one question lingered in the air. Could their newfound unity and emotional openness withstand the pressure of the impending showcase, or would the weight of their dreams prove too heavy to bear? The answer lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be written in the laughter and tears yet to come. The punchline was quieter than usual that night, the usual buzz of nervous energy replaced by a heavy stillness that seemed to settle over the crooked wooden tables and threadbare red curtains. Outside, the neon sign sputtered and flickered like a dying heartbeat, casting patchy pools of blue and pink light onto the cracked sidewalk. Inside the cramped back room, Max Harper sat hunched over a battered notebook, his pen scratching furiously against the page. The words felt elusive tonight, slipping away just as he caught them, as if the weight of tomorrow's showcase pressed down on his very bones. Max's gaze flicked up to the grimy window, where the hazy glow of street lamps cut through the early evening mist. His fingers tightened around the pen, his mind a jumble of jokes, fears, and memories. He thought about his family, their disappointed voices echoing in his head, and the promise he'd made to himself to prove that this ragtag comedy club was more than just a rundown relic. It was home, it was hope, and it was the last thing standing between him and giving up. A sudden burst of laughter from the hallway startled him, and the door creaked open. Jenna Lee bounced in, her short curly hair a riot of curls escaping her colorful headband, eyes bright with a mix of nerves and excitement. "Max, you look like you're about to wrestle a bear," she teased, grinning as she plopped down on the chipped wooden chair across from him. Max offered a sardonic smile. "Maybe I am. Tomorrow's the big night, Jenna. If this doesn't work, I don't know what will." Jenna waved a hand dismissively. "We've got this. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We bomb and go down in flames. That's comedy gold in itself." Max laughed, a short sardonic burst that betrayed his tension. "You always know how to make me feel better." Before Jenna could reply, the door opened again, and Elliot Brooks appeared, his tall, lean frame silhouetted in the dim light. His usual simple tee and jeans looked a little worse for wear, and a faint shadow of exhaustion clung to his face. Yet beneath that, there was a flicker of something softer, maybe hope, or relief at being among friends who understood the weight he carried. "You two plotting world domination without me." Elliot's voice was dry, the hint of a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Jenna perked up. "Never. We're just trying to keep Max from turning into a nervous wreck." Elliot chuckled, taking a seat beside them. "Well, good luck with that." The three of them sat in companionable silence for a moment, the hum of the city filtering through the cracked window. Then Maya Sanchez appeared, her short bob neatly framing her face, glasses perched on her nose. She carried a clipboard and moved with the efficiency of someone used to juggling chaos. "I've updated the schedule," Maya said, tapping the clipboard. "Sound checks at 5, dress rehearsal at 7. We need everyone sharp. Tony's already setting up the stage. Tony Russo's voice came from the doorway, a loud, boisterous greeting that broke the tension like a clap of thunder. You hear that? Time to make some noise. The group smiled, the warmth of their shared purpose momentarily pushing back the shadows of doubt. Later, as the night deepened, the comedians gathered in the green room. A cramped space cluttered with costume racks, empty coffee cups, and half-eaten sandwiches. Jenna leaned against the wall, her colorful outfit a bright contrast to the peeling paint, while Elliot sat on the edge of a worn couch, arms folded. You really think this'll work? Elliot asked quietly, his voice low. Jenna met his gaze steadily. It has to. We're all in this together. Elliot nodded slowly. I guess it's time to stop running from the past and face what's coming. The moment was interrupted by a sharp knock on the door. Maya stepped in, her face serious. Victor Crane was seen near the club earlier. He's not going away. A hush fell over the room. Max clenched his fists. Then we give him a show he can't ignore. Outside, under the flickering glow of the neon, a sleek black car idled. Victor Crane stepped out, his cold eyes scanning the familiar facade, the sharp lines of his suit a stark contrast to the club's faded charm. He paused, a smirk playing on his lips, before disappearing into the city's shadows. Back inside, the troupe gathered for a final round of preparations. Nervous laughter mingled with whispered encouragements as they reminded each other why they fought so hard, not just for the punchline, but for the dreams and friendships that had survived so much. Max looked around at his friends, his heart pounding. Tomorrow was more than just a showcase. It was their stand against the darkness, threatening to swallow their world whole. And so, with hope flickering like that fragile neon sign, they braced themselves for whatever the night would bring, ready to face it together. But as the clock ticked closer to midnight, an unspoken question hung in the air. Could laughter truly be enough to save them all? The night stretched on, the city's restless energy seeping into every corner of the punchline. Each comedian wrestled with their own thoughts, memories of past failures, dreams deferred, the fragile bonds that held them together. Yet beneath the uncertainty, a quiet strength grew, fueled by shared laughter and the stubborn refusal to give up. Max found himself outside for a moment, the cool night air a balm against his racing mind. He looked up at the flickering sign, its intermittent glow a reflection of his own wavering confidence. A voice beside him made him jump. You gonna be okay? Jenna asked, her tone softer than usual. He nodded, managing a small smile. As long as we all show up tomorrow, yeah. She smiled back, the tension easing from her shoulders. Then let's make sure we do. Together, they turned back inside, ready to face the dawn and whatever challenges it might bring. For tomorrow, the punchline would not just be a club. It would be a beacon, a testament to the resilience of friendship, the power of humor, and the unyielding pursuit of dreams. And in that, perhaps, lay the true heart of their fight. The night was far from over, and the real test was yet to come. The anticipation in the air was palpable as the crowd filed into the punchline, an eager buzz threading through the dimly lit room. The mismatched chairs creaked under the weight of expectation, while the flickering neon sign outside cast an uneven glow through the grimy windows, a silent witness to the night's significance. Inside, the smell of stale beer mingled with the faint trace of burnt coffee, a scent that had come to define the club's charming imperfection. Backstage, the troupe moved with a mixture of nervous energy and practiced routine. Max Harper adjusted the collar of his worn leather jacket, his fingers trembling slightly despite the sardonic grin he wore as armor. Jenna Lee paced in her colorful outfit, her short curls bouncing with each step. Her laughter a little too loud to mask the tension building beneath her bright eyes. Elliot Brooks leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his tall, lean frame almost blending into the shadows, a cigarette smoldering between his fingers despite Maya's earlier protests. Maya Sanchez hovered nearby, clipboard in hand, eyes darting between the performers and the technical crew. 5 minutes till showtime, she announced, voice calm but firm, trying to knit the fraying nerves into something manageable. Tony Russo, in his usual backwards baseball cap, bounced on the balls of his feet, his stocky frame radiating restless energy. The first act was a newcomer, a jittery comic whose nervousness was almost contagious. As he took the stage, the microphone emitted a harsh crackling, followed by a sputtering feedback that cut into the silence like a knife. The spotlight flickered, wavering uncertainly, a metaphor not lost on anyone watching. The audience shifted uncomfortably, the tension thickening like fog. Max watched from the wings, jaw clenched. This was their moment, fragile as it was, and already the night threatened to unravel. He caught Jenna's eye. She forced a smile, but the tightness around her mouth betrayed her concern. When Jenna finally took the stage, she launched into her set with the usual effervescent charm, weaving personal anecdotes with sharp observations that coaxed laughter from the crowd. But backstage, the atmosphere was anything but light. Elliot, simmering with unspoken frustration, muttered under his breath about the club's direction and Jenna's rising prominence. Their simmering tension boiled over just as Jenna was delivering a punchline. A sharp exchange of words echoed from behind the curtain, voices rising in volume and intensity. Maya's eyes widened as she realized what was unfolding. Tony stepped closer, ready to intervene if necessary. Suddenly, Jenna stormed off stage mid-set, her voice carrying over the speakers as she addressed the audience directly, exposing the backstage strife in a moment of raw honesty that stunned everyone. Elliot responded with a sarcastic retort, the two trading barbs in a public spectacle that threatened to derail the entire showcase. The audience's laughter turned nervous, the fragile joy of the night cracking under the weight of real conflict. Max pushed his way onto the stage, the spotlights catching the determined set of his jaw. Clearing his throat, he launched into an impromptu routine, his wit sharp and self-deprecating, drawing the room back from the brink of discomfort. "Well," he quipped, "if we can survive that, maybe this club really is magical or cursed. Either way, you're stuck with us tonight." Laughter rippled through the crowd, genuine and healing. Behind the scenes, Maya and Tony worked frantically to resolve the technical issues, their hands flying over mixers and cables, their faces tight with concentration. The troupe regrouped, the earlier fissures still visible but momentarily patched by Max's quick thinking and humor. As the night wore on, the performers found their rhythm, their shared passion momentarily outweighing the fractures beneath. But the public clash between Jenna and Elliot lingered in the air, a reminder of the fragile balance they walked between friendship and ambition. Max's sardonic laugh echoed in his mind as he scribbled new jokes in his battered notebook later that night. The punchline was far from saved, the road ahead uncertain and fraught with challenges. Yet in that chaotic, shambolic showcase, they had glimpsed the resilience that bound them, a laughter that could not be silenced, even in darkness. The night ended not with triumphant applause, but with a cautious hope, a fragile promise whispered in the flickering lights and the lingering echoes of shared laughter. The question remained, could they hold together long enough to fight another day? And more pressingly, would the next act be their last? As Max glanced at the faint glow of dawn creeping through the grimy windows, he knew one thing for certain: the real show was just beginning. The backstage room smelled of stale beer and sweat, a faint undercurrent of desperation lingering like the low hum of a dying neon light. Folding chairs were scattered unevenly, some occupied, others askew, like the fractured state of the troupe. The chaos of the opening moments of the showcase still echoed faintly in their minds. Technical failures, a public feud, laughter that felt hollow rather than healing. Max sat hunched over, fingers nervously tracing the edges of his battered notebook. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on him, heavier than any spotlight. Around him, Jenna sat with her knees drawn close, her colorful outfit dulled by the grime of sweat and frustration. Elliot leaned against the wall, arms crossed, face unreadable but tight with unspoken emotions. Maya was pacing quietly, glasses perched on her nose, eyes flicking between each member of the troupe. Tony shuffled his baseball cap tighter on his head, a nervous energy radiating from his stocky frame. So, Maya finally broke the silence, her voice steady but soft. "This is where we are. Not where we wanted to be, but here." Max looked up, meeting her gaze. "Yeah, not exactly the night we dreamed of, huh?" Jenna laughed, a short, brittle sound. "Dreams feel pretty far away right now." Elliot's dry voice cut through the tension. "Farther than ever." The room fell quiet again. Max opened his notebook, flipping through pages of scribbled jokes and half-formed ideas. Maybe we're trying too hard to fix things all at once," he murmured. "Maybe we need to just remember why we started." Jenna nodded slowly. "I think I lost sight of that tonight. I got so caught up in proving myself, in all the noise, that I forgot why I love this." Elliot let out a rare, humorless chuckle. "Love comedy. I thought you were just here to keep the peace." "Maybe I was," Jenna admitted, "but it's more than that. It's who I am." Max closed his notebook and leaned forward. "Me too. I've been so afraid of failing, I pushed everyone away. But this group, this club, it's family." Maya stopped pacing and looked at each of them. "I've been risking everything to keep this place open. I'm scared, but I believe in you all. And I believe in the punchline." Tony stood, cracking his knuckles. "I may be the butt of the jokes sometimes, but I'm not going anywhere. We're stronger than one bad night." Slowly, the atmosphere shifted. Hurt gave way to hope. Frustration softened into determination. They weren't perfect, and the road ahead was uncertain, but their bond frayed but unbroken was a lifeline. "So," Max said with a half smile, "what's next?" Jenna grinned, her eyes bright despite the fatigue. "We get back up. We make them laugh." Elliot cracked a genuine smile, the first in hours. "And this time, we do it together." The backstage room, once a place of shadows, now felt like a small sanctuary. The punchline's neon flicker outside might still waver, but inside, a new light was beginning to burn. It wasn't the perfect performance, but it was theirs, imperfect, raw, and full of promise. As they stood and prepared to face the uncertain night ahead, the laughter that waited beyond the curtains felt a little closer, a little more real. And for the first time in a long while, the comedians believed they could pick up the pieces and rebuild not just the club, but themselves. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. But as the hum of the city seeped through the cracked walls, none of them could shake the looming question: could their newfound unity withstand the pressure of what was still to come? The night was far from over, and the real test was just beginning. The punchline's worn curtains drew back with a gentle rustle, revealing the stage bathed in a warm amber glow that softened the worn edges of the battered venue. The wooden floor creaked familiarly beneath the feet of the troupe as they stepped into the spotlight. the weight of the moment settling over them in a tangible hush. The packed room held its breath, friends, strangers, and loyal regulars alike, all drawn by the promise of laughter, hope, and perhaps a glimpse of something more. Max Harper was the first to step forward, his leather jacket hanging loosely from his frame. There was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, an unusual vulnerability that had been carefully guarded for so long. The usual sardonic edge to his voice softened as he began, weaving a story not just of jokes and punchlines, but of personal failures and the scars they left behind. His voice cracked briefly as he recounted a moment from his past, the room shifting from fits of laughter to a quiet empathy that wrapped around him like a warm blanket. The laughter returned, richer and more sincere, buoyed by the honesty that underscored each joke. Jenna Lee followed, her presence a burst of color on the dim stage. Her short curly hair caught the light as she animatedly shared tales of identity, belonging, and the complicated dance of chasing dreams while honoring one's roots. Her jokes were sharp and witty, but her delivery carried a tender undercurrent that resonated deeply with the crowd. She laughed easily, inviting the audience into her world, her energy infectious. Each punchline landed with a warmth that felt like an embrace, and the applause that followed was both thunderous and genuine. Elliot Brooks took the stage last, his tall, lean frame almost blending into the shadows at first. His deadpan delivery was a familiar landscape, but tonight there was a subtle shift, a hint of softness beneath the sarcasm. He spoke candidly about failure, burnout, and the fragile process of rebuilding oneself from the rubble. The audience leaned in, hanging on each carefully measured word, their laughter mingling with moments of reflective silence. As he closed his set, the cheers that erupted were not just for the jokes, but for the courage it took to share such truths. Backstage, Maya Sanchez watched with a quiet smile, her heart swelling with pride. The sacrifices she'd made, the battles she'd fought behind the scenes, all led to this moment of collective triumph. Tony Russo paced nervously, his usual boisterous energy tempered by the weight of the night. But even he found himself caught up in the magic unfolding on stage, his usual jokes tinged with a newfound sincerity. Together, the troupe had transformed the fragile threads of their individual stories into a tapestry of resilience and hope. The punchline was more than a club. It was a sanctuary where dreams were chased, friendships forged, and laughter became a lifeline. As the final applause echoed through the room, the comedians took their bows, their faces illuminated by the glow of shared victory and the uncertain promise of tomorrow. The future of the punchline remained unclear, but tonight, the power of their united voice had carved a space for hope to grow. Max caught Jenna's eye and smiled, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a promise to keep fighting, to keep laughing together. Elliot exhaled, the weight on his shoulders lightened by the unspoken bond that now held them tight. Outside, the city lights twinkled against the night sky, indifferent yet somehow hopeful. Inside the punchline, laughter lingered in the air, a beacon against the darkness. And as the comedians left the stage, the echo of their final act carried with it a question hanging softly in the air. Could this night be the beginning of something new? The answer, like the city itself, was waiting to be written. The air backstage was thick with a cocktail of sweat, stale beer, and something softer, something like relief. The aftermath of the showcase left the punchline drenched in a silence that was both heavy and healing. Max Harper slumped against the peeling brick wall, his leather jacket crumpled around him like the night's tension. His dark hair was tousled, sweat dampened, and his usual sardonic laugh was subdued, replaced by the quiet sound of deep breaths. Across the cramped room, Jenna Lee sat perched on the edge of an overturned crate, her colorful outfit a sharp contrast to the dingy surroundings. Her short curls shimmered under the flickering fluorescent light as she bit her lip, eyes scanning the faces of their troop. Elliot Brooks leaned against a battered wooden table, arms crossed, his usual dry expression softened by exhaustion. The smoke haze from his cigarette lingered faintly, mingling with the scent of spilled beer and cigarette ash. Maya Sanchez hovered near the bar, her short bob tucked behind one ear as she methodically counted the night's takings. Her glasses caught the dim light, reflecting the tired but unwavering gaze that had kept this club afloat. Tony Russo, baseball cap worn backwards as always, was perched on a stool, cracking a rare joke that drew a few reluctant smiles, breaking through the emotional fatigue. The night had been a messy, chaotic jumble of technical failures and raw nerves, but somehow, through the cracks, the heart of the punchline had bled bright. Their final act had stitched together the frayed edges of the group, weaving humor and vulnerability into a fragile tapestry of hope. Max's eyes drifted toward the small window that gave a view of the flickering neon sign outside. The familiar glow was uneven, the sign sputtering like a heartbeat struggling to stay alive. In his jacket pocket, the eviction notice from Victor Crane's legal team felt heavier than the night's exhaustion. It was a cold reminder that their battle was far from over. "We did it," Jenna whispered, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft but firm, a thread of optimism weaving through the fatigue. "We showed them who we are." Elliot let out a dry chuckle, the sound carrying a hint of disbelief. "Whoever them is, they're not going anywhere. Not yet, anyway." Max glanced up, meeting Elliot's tired eyes. "It's not over. Victor's not just going to roll over." Maya stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Max's shoulder. "We knew that from the start. But look around. This crew. We're stronger than we think." Tony nodded emphatically. "Yeah, and next time, I'm bringing the pies. No more bomb sets on my watch." Laughter rippled through the room, light and unexpected, a bomb over the night's raw edges. Later, as the crowd thinned and the club settled into a quiet hum, Jenna found herself alone with Elliot near the empty stage. The tension between them, raw and unresolved, seemed to pulse in the dim light. "Look," Jenna began hesitantly, "about tonight." Elliot interrupted with a sardonic smile. "You mean the bit where I almost punched you?" She sighed, then laughed softly. "Something like that? I guess I'm sorry. For everything." He shrugged, eyes glinting with something unreadable. "Me too. Maybe we're better off as rivals than enemies." Their handshake was tentative, a silent truce forged in the quiet aftermath. It was fragile like the future of the punchline itself, but it was a start. Outside, Max lingered under the neon glow, the eviction notice crumpled in his hand. The city's noises swirled around him, distant sirens, the murmur of late-night traffic, laughter spilling from a nearby bar. Somewhere in the chaos, the punchline lived on, a stubborn flicker of light in the sprawling city. He thought of the club's battered walls, the countless jokes scribbled in his battered notebook, the friends who had become family. It wasn't just a building. It was a beacon for their dreams, a stage for their truths. "We fight," he muttered to himself. "For the laughs, for the love, for the life that this place gives us." And somewhere deep inside, beneath the cynicism and fear, a spark of hope kindled. The battle was not won, but the war for the punchline's soul had only just begun. As dawn crept over the city skyline, the troop gathered one last time in the dim light, their laughter echoing into the uncertain future of promise that no matter what came next, they would face it together. The punchline might flicker, falter, and fade. But as long as they held on to their humor and each other, the night would always end with laughter. The punchline's neon sign flickered uncertainly against the early hours of the night. Its pale glow, a stubborn heartbeat in the relentless pulse of New York City. Inside, the familiar scent of stale beer mingled with the sharp tints of sweat and anticipation. The club, though battered and worn, hummed with a quiet energy that was both fragile and fierce. Tonight was not just another show. It was a testament to gathering of souls bound by laughter and dreams that refused to die. Max Harper adjusted the microphone stand, his fingers tracing the worn leather of his jacket as if drawing strength from its familiar weight. The room was dim, the amber stage lights casting long shadows that danced softly along the cracked walls. Faces filled the seats, some regulars, others newcomers drawn by the buzz of a final night. A last chance to witness the heartbeat of a place many had called home. He stepped forward, the creak of the wooden floor beneath his feet a grounding rhythm. Max's voice cut through the murmurs, warm and steady, carrying a joke that was equal parts humor and heart. Laughter rippled through the room, not loud or boisterous, but genuine, an embrace across the small space that felt like a promise. This was their sanctuary, their battleground, their family. Backstage, Jenna Lee paced slowly, her colorful outfit a bright contrast to the muted backstage walls. Her breath caught in her throat as she watched Elliot Brooks settle into a quiet corner, his lean frame hunched in contemplative stillness. The tension that once defined their rivalry had softened, replaced by an unspoken understanding. Jenna smiled to herself, the weight of past conflicts lifting as she caught Elliot's eye. A small nod, a shared smile, simple gestures that spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Maya Sanchez sat at the manager's table near the bar, her short bob framing her face as she counted the meager cash in the register. The numbers were tight, the future uncertain, but her eyes gleamed with fierce determination. Nearby, Tony Russo, stocky and jovial, launched into an impromptu dance, eliciting chuckles that filled the room with warmth. In that moment, the imperfections of the night, the flickering lights, the creaky floorboards, the strained finances felt less like obstacles and more like parts of a story still being written. As the night deepened, the performances unfolded like chapters in a shared memoir. Max's set wove humor with vulnerability, each punchline a bridge between past regrets and future hopes. Jenna's act sparkled with the optimism that had always defined her, tempered now with a newfound confidence that came from surviving heartbreak and hardship. Elliot's deadpan delivery held a quiet joy, a rediscovered love for the craft that had once seemed lost. The audience responded with laughter and applause, a chorus of support that buoyed the performers' spirits. The air was thick with the bittersweet taste of what was and what could be, a delicate balance between celebration and farewell. Outside, the city breathed around them, indifferent yet alive. As midnight approached, the troupe gathered beneath the flickering neon sign, its light casting playful shadows on their faces. They raised cheap beer bottles in a toast, their laughter weaving into the night like a defiant anthem. "To the punchline," Max said, voice steady, eyes shining. "To us, to whatever comes next." Jenna grinned, the weight of the journey pressing lightly on her shoulders. "We may not know the future, but we have each other, and that's enough for now." Elliot nodded, the cynicism softened into quiet hope. "As long as there's laughter, there's life." Maya's smile was tired but genuine. "And as long as we're together, this place will never truly die." Tony lifted his bottle higher. "Here's to midnight laughter, may it echo forever." The night stretched on, filled with stories, jokes, and the unspoken promise that no matter what storms the future held, they would face them together. The punchline stood not just as a building, but as a bikina testament to resilience, friendship, and the healing power of humor. As the city's heartbeat slowed toward dawn, the comedians parted ways, carrying with them the warmth of shared dreams and the strength of a bond forged in laughter. The neon sign flickered once more, steadying as if breathing with them. The future was uncertain, but the fight, their fight, was far from over. And somewhere in the quiet, a new joke was waiting to be told.